Welcome back. I'm David Knight. If you tuned in last night, you know that we talked about some human testing that the EPA is conducting. And we've got in the studio tonight Steve Malloy. He runs the website junkscience.com. He is a biostatistician, and he's working with the ATI Environmental Law Center. Steve, we've got a new court decision, and but before we get into that, we want to talk to you about just kind of briefly bring people who didn't hear this last night, kind of briefly tell them what the EPA is doing that you're trying to stop.
Okay. There's an air pollutant. It's called PM 2.5. For the last 10 years or so, EPA has been telling the public about how deadly this pollutant is. EPA says there's no safe exposure to PM 2.5. EPA says that any exposure can kill you, and any exposure can kill you within hours or days of you inhaling it. Mm-hmm. Now, and this sentiment has been, it's in EPA's 2004 scientific assessment of 2.5. It's in a 2009 scientific assessment. EPA Administrator Lisa Jackson has testified in Congress that PM 2.5 doesn't make you sick, it just kills you. EPA Air Chief Gina McCarthy has written to Congress telling them that there's no safe level of exposure to PM 2.5. EPA itself, in its documents filed as part of our lawsuit, has admitted that PM 2.5 can kill you, can kill people involved in these experiments. So I found out about a year ago that EPA has been conducting these human experiments with PM 2.5, and so I filed several Freedom of Information Act requests and enlisted a bunch of data, and out of all that data, thousands of pages of documents, I discovered that not only is EPA testing this deadly PM 2.5 on people, but they're lying to them about the effects. Keep in mind, EPA has said this stuff is deadly. It's so deadly it can kill you within hours of any exposure. When EPA experiments with these people, they get them to sign these consent forms. And the consent forms only say, well, the worst thing that can happen is in some particularly sensitive people, there may be some coughing or wheezing that'll go away in about 2 hours.
Right, and they were actually feeding diesel exhaust into the testing chamber, straight into these people, right?
Since 2004, all the experiments involve PM 2.5. PM 2.5 is a major component of diesel exhaust and really all auto exhaust. And so not only has EPA been piping what they can claim to be a deadly toxin into the lungs of people and then lying to them about it, the people they're pumping the diesel exhaust and PM 2.5 into, they're elderly people as old as 75. They're people with metabolic syndrome. They're moderate asthmatics, in some cases combinations of those three. So these are health impaired people. There's an ongoing study right now at EPA where they feel they have people who are genetically susceptible to pollution, to air pollution, that they are exposing them to PM 2.5. So
they're selectively trying to get people who they think are going to have an adverse health reaction in this testing.
Yes. I mean, in essence, what EPA is doing, they really don't have any good science to back up their conclusions that PM 2.5 is so dangerous. So they're actually trying to develop that in the laboratory after they've already started regulating PM 2.5.
Now, this court decision that came up yesterday, tell us a little bit about that. That was a temporary restraining order, right?
Well, we have filed a lawsuit to get all this stopped because this violates every rule, regulation, ethical standard set since World War II governing the protection of human subjects involved in scientific experiments. In addition to our lawsuit to get all this stopped, we filed an emergency motion for a temporary restraining order yesterday to get the ongoing trial stopped, because right now there's a trial where EPA is exposing people to PM 2.5 and lying to them about it. So we went into court yesterday, and we really ran into procedural hurdles. We ran into the judge wanted to know what the subject matter jurisdiction, why should this court be listening to this case? So we went in. So we presented our case, EPA presented theirs, and just to cut to the chase, the judge ruled for EPA, saying that it doesn't appear there's subject matter jurisdiction, but he let us. He dismissed our motion without prejudice, so we can refile. And he suggested that we refile. We need to go back and figure out exactly how his court has jurisdiction to hear this case. But the remarkable thing about this is that here's a federal court who hears that EPA is doing these terrible things, exposing people to this deadly substance, lying to them about it, and we're worried about the Marcus of Queensberry jurisdiction rules.
Yeah,
it's kind of crazy.
Now, in the jurisdiction, was he saying that, I mean, this isn't something like you were in the wrong geographical area or something like that? I mean, when I got I got something here from David Schneier, and who's your counsel, and he said that Judge Tringa, is that how you pronounce his name? Tringa was uncomfortable with EPA's claim that there is no situation in which a court could review their human experimentation on the basis that research is not a final agency action. So that was the basis on which you say you didn't have jurisdiction, right? Was that it wasn't, I mean, when it's not a final agency action, is he saying it's not final regulatory action? Is he saying that no court can oversee whatever EPA is doing on experimentation? Was that what he was saying?
Well, he was uncertain, at least, and so we have to go back and do some more homework and figure out how that can be. Courts are listening to hearing people complain about regulations that have been issued, final agency actions. Mm-hmm. This is not really a regulation, yet it's still agency action, and it's pretty final. It's pretty final for you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when I saw this, it reminded me, you talked about violating codes that go back to World War II. And you've talked at great length on videos, other videos, about specific ways in which this has violated the Nuremberg codes, which were enacted as a result of medical experimentations by the Nazis. And now we have, the Nuremberg trials, they didn't just try medical doctors, they also tried judges who didn't stop things, right? I mean, the whole movie...
They put judges on trial, too.
Yeah, the whole movie, Judgment at Nuremberg, was about the judges going on trial. It wasn't about trying Joseph Mengele, the people who had done things. It was about actually trying the judge who had done this. And so now we've got an American judge. So now we have an American judge saying that even when these people even when the EPA has violated at least half of the Nuremberg Code, as well as other EPA rules, as well as medical ethical rules that are in place, that he shouldn't do anything about it.
Yeah, David, I've got to say I was astounded.
Yeah.
Because we laid out a good case of what EPA is doing is, I don't care how you slice it, it's illegal. It's a crime. You can't lie to people about exposing them to what you have determined is essentially the most toxic substance on the planet.
Right.
Okay? And this judge is like, well, I don't know that I have jurisdiction to hear this case. I mean, you talk about being a stickler for the rules.
I've got the declaration of Martin W. Case, who was involved in these studies. He was a clinical research studies coordinator for CAPTAIN, which is the name of the study.
Right.
And he says some pretty amazing stuff in here. He talks about his procedure with the test subjects as they come in. And in item 6, he says, he asks them, do you have any questions about what you have read, and do you understand what you've read? Now, he's asking about what they read, and there's nothing in there in the written thing that says that there's anything dangerous about this. He tries to backpedal that later on in the document, but he's asking if they understand what they read. Well, what they've read is saying exactly the opposite of. He tries to backpedal and say further down the document that he warns them that this could be very serious, that it could have adverse health effects, but it says just the opposite of that in the written document. Is that correct?
The written consent form, which is where EPA has to make every disclosure about the health risks, only says there may be some coughing and wheezing that'll go away in 2 hours. Mm-hmm. Now, this guy Case, he says, well, I tell them orally that there's a possibility they may die from this.
Right.
First off, that by itself should get this whole experiment canceled.
Right. And he tells them that orally after he asks them if they understand what they've read and have questions about what they read.
He only claims to tell them orally, and in any event, under the federal regulations, it's called the common rule, the consent must be in writing, especially where there is a risk of serious harm. And death is pretty serious, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. There's another spot here, two items down in item number 8. He says, I will state in lay terms to them how they will be exposed to the particles for 2 hours and explain that this is similar and comparable to going about their everyday activities based on where they live. And yet, he was exposing people up to 72 times what the EPA typically allows. I mean, they penalize cities if they have, you know, they have a level that they've set, and they penalize cities if they go above that level. And they were exposing people to 72 times that. That's not comparable.
Yeah, no. Any fair reading of EPA's response would get EPA the electric chair in any fair hearing. I think maybe the judge didn't want to go there, and that's why he's hung his hat on jurisdiction. He's trying to avoid going there with the agency because these are very serious charges. Recently Senator Inhofe got involved in this, and he suggested that EPA has criminal liability. Mm-hmm. And I would suggest to you that Senator Inhofe is a very serious man and does not say things like that lightly. Mm-hmm.
And now he's requested for there to be hearings. What's your sense on that? I mean, what's the time frame for something like that to happen? Does it take an act of Congress to stop these people? And if so, how long does it take Congress to act?
Well, we're coming to an interesting point here. I mean, we're getting to the end of this Congress. What the next Congress is going to look like, we don't really know yet. What the next administration is going to look like, we really don't know yet. Right. So this is a very interesting and uncertain time. Certainly, this issue is going to carry over into 2013. Whether how far the Obama administration goes into 2013 remains to be seen. How long Barbara Boxer is chairman of the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee remains to be seen. But this issue will continue because this is very serious. EPA is continuing to act badly, refuses to change anything in its procedures, even though they're clearly wrong. So, we're going to see. The North Carolina Medical Board, some of these EPA physicians doing the research are licensed in North Carolina. The North Carolina Medical Board is looking at this. The University of North Carolina, which is involved in EPA research, has some serious liability, so they're looking into this. This is an issue that, we lost yesterday on this jurisdictional technicality, but rest assured this issue is not over.
Let me ask you about you filed something with the district attorney in Chapel Hill, is that correct?
Right.
Because this is criminal activity. I mean, this is something that state jurisdiction should have. This is the EPA doing something, violating their own rules. But I mean, this is criminal activity, doing this kind of human experimentation with people.
Right. Interestingly enough, I have filed numerous complaints with lots of different organizations. For example, North Carolina Medical Board, the University of North Carolina, the Presidential Commission for the study of bioethics, and I've heard back from everybody. I also filed a complaint with the Orange County District Attorney. Orange County is where the University of North Carolina Chapel Hill is located. Mm-hmm. I have not heard back from him yet.
Really?
And is it because he's a Democrat? Yeah. I don't.
He's just not interested in human trials going on there.
Well, I mean, look, this is not a case where EPA and the University of North Carolina have violated some technical federal regulations. Mm-hmm. These regulations are among the most sacrosanct in science because they come from. We're not comparing EPA to the Nazis, but these rules are so sacrosanct because they come from the experience with the Nazis. They come from the experience with the Tuskegee syphilis experiments. Right. And there have been other human testing horrors throughout history. So these rules come out of some very egregious conduct. They're not just technical rules where EPA's forgot to dot the I's, cross the T's, check the box.
That's right. And when the government doesn't exercise any accountability over its agents, you're not going to get, you're not going to have any ethical things. You're going to have very dangerous government. We see this over and over again. And over again, we see even, I think, Jesse Ventura tried to sue over how he's being treated by the TSA. And again, the court says we have no jurisdiction. At some point, somebody has got to hold some of these actors accountable for what they're doing when they do criminal things and when they violate their own rules and regulations.
Right. And look, when I went to law school, the first thing we learned was the federal rules of procedure and really all modern rules of civil procedure are meant to facilitate the hearing of the merits of the case. They're not supposed to be used as these sort of arbitrary walls, to prevent the hearing of a case on the merits. I was very disappointed. The judge yesterday, he heard what we had to say about how dangerous this stuff is and how EPA is misleading people and lying to them. And then, he's just stuck on this technicality. Mm-hmm.
So now you're going to come back and try to get you're going to try a different argument with this same judge to get a temporary restraining order. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, I don't know that we're going to go back for the temporary restraining order because just the way the legal cases. I mean, we have a permanent injunction going on, and so there may be a hearing on that sooner than we can get a hearing on another TRO. We're going to see. We're evaluating all the options right now. So I just advise people to stay tuned. I mean, it's not over.
And there's a now. Maybe you can clear this up since you're a lawyer. There's another separate lawsuit. Is that correct, or another part of it? This is just a temporary restraining order, but there is an ongoing lawsuit that has been fired.
There's a more permanent injunction that we've asked for, and that hasn't been heard yet.
Right.
But it's similar issues are involved. So the jurisdictional hurdle we had yesterday, that's going to come up again.
Yes.
And so the issue here is. You can tell me that there are these rules under which EPA has to act, but nobody can enforce them?
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's really crazy. Well, Steve, thank you so much for talking to us tonight. We're going to want to keep in touch with you and find out how this goes, and maybe we can stop human experimentation here right in America. Well, that's it. I guess the EPA can do whatever they want as long as they call it an experiment. Thanks for tuning in tonight. That's the Nightly News. I'm David Knight.
Alex Jones here with a message that could revolutionize health in this country. Going back about a year and a half ago, I began to learn about the incredible health effects of longevity products. Aaron Dykes lost 92 pounds. We're going to show you some before and afters. Aaron, break down what happened, your story.
I've worked really hard with diet and exercise to try to lose weight, but I just didn't get the results. It just didn't happen. Then I saw what you were doing with InfoWarsTeam.com. I wasn't even trying to lose weight, but I got it because I wanted to feel better energy. I wanted that nutrition. Didn't even understand how that could kickstart my own weight loss goals, but the products did that for me. I found myself suddenly losing weight, more energetic, wanting to exercise, wanting to eat the right foods.
And they don't even advertise it as weight loss. I want to challenge our radio listeners to go to InfoWarsTeam.com, sign up as a distributor, and get wholesale pricing discounts at InfoWarsTeam.com.